I've been thinking about making this video on how to learn Esperanto. And in particular, it's just Esperanto, not French, not German, and the others. And there's a reason for that, and I'll show you. First of all, let's face it, when you're learning Esperanto, it's your choice. There's nobody making you learn this. This is your choice. If you were in parts of Canada where you had to study French, you wouldn't want to do it. Then you take French, but you don't learn French. And also, if you're in French Canada, you are forced to take English. You do it reluctantly. But truthfully, my French-speaking friends in Quebec confessed they would rather learn Spanish. Why? They have their reasons, but basically you're not forced to. It's fun to do something you're not forced to do. Esperanto is unique. Nobody's forcing you to make it. So the very first prerequisite in learning something is it has to be your choice, coming from you, as opposed to coming from outside force. And that's a key element here. In learning, we learn better if it's our choice, a part of us, what we want to do, rather than what somebody says you should do. How many times there's a job that you would make more money if you did what they wanted, as opposed to if you did something you liked. Okay, you can deal with yourself and make a bargain with the devil and do this and do that. But truthfully, it's always better if it's your choice. Okay, so I'm going to recommend a book. There are many books out there. I got it right over here. This is my favorite book. It's good to have many books. When I was learning German, one book was never enough. And French, no, one book is, they have a textbook or whatever. You get many books. Each time you go over it, it's repetition. It comes from a different book. That helps because you don't like to do the same thing and do the same pages. You need something refreshing, but it's the same. So, get several books. When you're learning a language, that's not the time to scrimp and save on a textbook. This one's a little bit expensive. It's a complete Esperanto. I think they all say complete. How complete? I don't know. But anyway, in this one, it's got great exercises, great vocabulary and everything, and I really like it. And this is what I bought first. Then artificial intelligence came out. Wow. Artificial intelligence. And I'm going to get to that in a second because that changes everything. And I'll show you why. I'll show you a technique you can use to help yourself learn. First, let's talk about Ebbinghaus. Ebbinghaus is a German, about in the 18 something, I don't know. I just remember I was fascinated with this guy because all by himself, without a lot of money or whatever, he used himself as a guinea pig to study the problem of forgetting. If you're learning something, the key here is to remember it. Okay, so what he did is he gave himself, let's say he gave himself 30 nonsense words. They were nonsensical words. They were made up. They didn't resemble anything, and that's very important. When we learn a language, if we're lucky, we have a lot of cognates, friends, words that are very similar. I was astounded to find that the word to send in Esperanto is sendi. Imagine, same word, so simple. Those are easy. The more of those we have, the faster and quicker and easier we can learn it. Okay, but here's the trick. Here's what you have to remember. Ebbinghaus discovered that within 20 minutes, you forget, let's say, 20% of the words. I can't remember exactly what it is. You can look it up. Look up Ebbinghaus, E-B-B, E-N-H-A-U-S. And then, in 24 hours, you forget a huge bunch. So, and that's disappointing. After you put all that time in, you want to be able to remember it. Okay, first rule here, don't put a lot of time in. Limit yourself when it comes to flashcards. I do the old-fashioned method. I put them on 3x5 cards, and I don't just put a word there, I put them in a phrase, something that I can see in my mind or feel, not away from the abstract. It has to mean something to you. Okay, so I make those cards. I do them for maybe maximum 20 minutes, set them aside, forget about them. If I'm lucky, I'll come back to them in the same day, do the same thing the next day, and 3 days, and you will find you actually start to remember them, which is the goal. But it takes repetition, not how long you study. You know this anyway. You have found out through trial and error. But now we have scientific, sort of scientific proof by this guy Ebbinghaus, where he actually shows the forgetting curve. And one of the other things that we remember the first words and the last words. We forget the center. So mix them up. That's the trick there. Okay, so you get yourself a good book as an orientation. If you're lucky, you find a tutor. That's wonderful. I find the tutor, after artificial intelligence, the tutor's great because you need somebody, you have to hear it and then speak it. You can learn to read it and write it, but that's not my goal here. I want to be able to speak this. I want to be able to see somebody, talk to them, hug them, have coffee, talk about how bad the weather is in Esperanto. So what we want to do here is do the repetition. Now here's what's really important about artificial intelligence. For the first time, we can actually you can make a paragraph. You can wake up and you can say, gee, I had a rough day yesterday. I took out the garbage, and I met the neighbor. The neighbor was all depressed. You can go on and tell a little story here. Not long, very short. I keep them in a book, and I write them in longhand. I like to write them, make myself do each letter so that I'm aware of the little details that's easy to forget. For instance, the word for message, mensajon. Okay. Mensajon. It's got an N in there. The first time I saw it, I would say mensajon. No, it's mensajon. So you have to go over it carefully. So after you've got what you want to say, you write it down in English, assuming you're Anglophone, and then you take what you wrote, or you can write it directly into artificial intelligence, into the program, ChatGPT. Write it right in there, just a quarter of a page. Then tell it to translate it, translates it beautifully. And then you take that, I take it and I copy it. And what I do, it's not necessary to copy it. Actually, I started to copy it, but now I write it down by myself and put it in my little book. When I get it in the book, I then start to repeat it, read it. I just read it. I have to be able to read it smoothly. Okay, then when I get that far, I can read it smoothly. I take out my cell phone and I actually record what I have written here in Esperanto. Now here is the trick. Here is where you have to actively participate in what you've done. You can't be a passive tourist on this. You've got to be a part of it. So like in the first sentence, I'll say, mi sendis mensajon al mi instruisto. Okay, I'll say it out, I hear it, then I'll break it up. Mi sendis mensajon, then I'll pause. I make a pause to give myself enough time to say it. Then I'll go on and I'll say, al mi instruisto, to my teacher, al mi instruisto. And then I make a pause, and then I'll do the rest. And I'm making a pause in all these. Then I'll go back, and I'll say the first part again, only I'll say more. I'll say, mi sendis mensajon al mi instruisto, and then a long pause. So I'll play with that over until I get through the whole paragraph that I actually recorded. When I do that, it's difficult the first time. Then later, and then the next day, it comes easier and it comes easier. And then we'll get to the point where we can actually anticipate. So when I'm hearing this say, mi sendis, I'll say, oh, mensajon. I'll know it before it comes. So I am now actively participating. I call this echoing, because you speak it, it speaks it, and then you repeat it. This is very similar to shadowing, which is great. And that would be a good thing to do if you're working with a native speaker. Hey, but wait a minute, this is Esperanto. There's no native speaker here. You can put any speaker in here you want. So I accepted the apology, and now I understand that AU has to do with time things. Soon is time, tomorrow is time, now, all those words. Okay, so I'm going to leave you on this before I get too long. Get back to me, and let's have fun with Esperanto. I am so sorry I got carried away in making this video, and it got to be too long, and YouTube rejected it. So this is the first half. Come on back for the second half, in which I'm going to tell you why you should learn Esperanto. Subscribe if you like and want to go further with this. Give me a thumbs up and let me know in your comments how you approach the study of Esperanto.